understand first the nested if-else statements. So let's first try to look at its architecture, because this is what we are actually going to use to solve our next problem. So this condition states that if condition 1, then we can have our output here. Else, if we have now condition 2. So I want you to note the format so we can have our output here. So we have this here. So we have the else if condition 1. We have condition 1, condition 2. That means we can have several conditions again. So let's say, let me just close this. Let's say we have another one, another condition. So else if have condition 3. Then we have our output here. Else, so finally, so let's say none of the conditions were met, then we can have else, then the default. So I want you to note something here. This means, so this last part, the else, will automatically be executed if all these conditions are not met, starting from condition 1, 2, 3, and by default, this will be executed if none of these conditions is met. So failure to meet condition 1, then we move to the next line. If this is met, then we exit out of this and directly print out to our output. So that's the console. So this is its architecture. So let's try to check on a simple example. So back into our student example, so the class 1. So let's have maybe like a score, and then also let's have a pass mark. So we can have maybe like check the score of a student and also check the pass mark, and try to cross check if the student is maybe like a genius or the student failed. So to do that, we are going to first have to assign our variables. So let's say we have a int score. So let's say the student scored 50, and then so we're going to also store our pass mark. Let's store our pass mark now as an integer. So let's say pass mark is 80. So we are trying to assign this to make sure that we get our computer to book space. So remember that storing this, like our score is a variable, and we actually use the assignment operator and not the equal operator. So this is an assignment operator, and we are assigning 50 to this variable, and we are telling our compiler that this is an integer. So the next thing I want us to do is we start checking. So let's say now that if the score is equal to maybe like the pass mark. So remember, we have to use the double quotes. So if it's now equal to the pass mark, then we say you scored passed. No, then you say, let's just say you passed. Then if the score is greater than pass mark, so let's tell the student that maybe like you are a genius. Then if it's now less than pass mark, so let me just use PM, then we can now tell the student that you failed. So this is actually what we are going to do with the next nested statement. So let me just not delete that. So let's say from our first condition, let's first check for this if it's equal. So we're going to say here, if the score is equal to the pass mark, then cout, let's just tell the user, so maybe like you scored the pass mark. So let's just have it just like that as a statement. So don't worry about the statement. So you're just trying to make sure that if these conditions are equal, then we're going to tell the student that you scored the pass mark. So that means she have to score 80. So instead of saying if 50 is equal to 80, so we just use our variables, because these variables we have assigned here. So what we're trying to say here is if 50 is equal to 80. So instead of using this, then we are now using our variables. So make sure that you understand that. Don't cram programming. Then we now have else if. So our second condition was that we want to check if actually like the score is greater than the pass mark. So if score is greater than pass mark, then what actually do we want to do? So I want to tell the user, so we say that we tell the user you are genius. So you are genius. So don't mind about my spelling. Then we have another condition here. So if it's less, then we want to say to the student that you fail. So else if score is less than pass mark, then we want to let our user know that he or she failed. You failed. Then we'll have, of course, the default else. So let's say like invalid input. So maybe like if a user maybe entered in a string. So remember to see out. So I think we are up and running. So let's try run our program. So our score, remember, is 50, and 50 of course is not equal to 80. So our score is 50, and then so from our first condition here we are saying is 50 equal to 80? No. Then we're going to proceed here. Is 50 greater than 80? No. So we are back here to the next condition here. Is 50 less than 80? Yes. So we expect that our compiler will now print you failed. So let's run this. Oh, we forgot something here. So let's run it. So you now see that our student unfortunately failed. So let's give it a score. Let's say our score is 90. So we now expect that the score is greater than pass mark. So we expect to tell our student that he or she is a genius. So if you run that, you now see that you are a genius. So the next thing, let's say we have a score of maybe like 0. The student scored nothing. So let's see what happened. So we now see that you failed again. So what happens if you now score 80, just like the pass mark score? So from that, you see now that you scored the pass mark. Now, we have actually like tried to solve this, but there is one problem. So before we move into solving that problem, I want you to see. So let me just have a score here. So let me like negative 80. So I don't know if there are negative scores. Of course, it will tell me I failed, but there are no negative scores here. So maybe I can score 800. Let's say I have scored 800. I run this. It will tell me you are a genius. But there are no scores more than 100 actually. So I want you to think of how we are going to use other conditional operators to like other comparison operators to like try to solve that. So I'm going to actually like run a quick one. So let me just open another editor here so that I can actually like have this so that we can come and solve this. So I want you to, so I'm going to remove that. Then I'm just gonna paste here. So let me just remove this again and paste it here. So let me just run to make sure that my program is running. Yes. So as you think of solving this problem, I want us to do another quick example here. So remember, we used the math operation to find the largest number between two numbers. So this is where now we want to understand behind the scenes of how these math operations work. So let's try to actually like maybe like check for two numbers. So we can assign maybe the first number as 20. Then we can assign our second number. So let's say our second number is actually 30. Then we're going to assign again. So we want to check for these two conditions. So I want you to make sure that you are keen here. So I want you to make sure that you understand how these statements work clearly. So from this first condition here, let's say we want to check between these two numbers. Instead of using the match lot, maybe like the largest, to get the largest numbers between two numbers, we can now use these variables. So for example, we want to use this. So we are going to use the if statements. So we are going to say if num1 is greater than num2, then we're going to set our largest number to be actually 30. So to do that, we are going to have maybe so let's assign here our let's just create a new variable. So we're going to say int largest. So you're going to say largest. Now, so we're going to assign here. So we're going to update actually largest is equal to maybe now 1. So this is actually the basic architecture. So what we are trying to do here is we're trying to check if num1 is greater than num2, then set the largest number to be num1. So that's actually how we're going to check. So else if num2, the second number, is now greater than num1, then we now set update our largest number to actually num2. So then we can say now that else, because we only have two conditions, a greater or smaller or equal to, then we can now just say largest. So we can just say cout, we can just tell our user that they are both equal. So let's just say here both are equal. Then you end that with a semicolon. So this is actually like the simplest way of understanding how nested if else condition works. So from here, we're just checking if num1 is greater than num2, then we assign the largest to num1. Is num2 greater than num1, then we assign the largest number to actually num2. So remember, we always tell your compiler what data type you are using. So because these are all numbers, then we just decided to use integers. Then we have these else by default. So if you now run this, let's see what will be updated. Then we have actually nothing. So we can just say, now, like, we can see out the largest. So let's just print this. So we can print that, then see out largest number. So if you run that, then we now see that 30 is being printed as the largest number. So let's say we now have another number here, like 200 is now bigger one. So if you run this, we expect that 200 will be printed. So if you now have maybe, let's say we have 200 here. So that's 200 and 200. So we have this, then you can now see that both are equal. So this is actually a simple way of how the largest and smallest inbuilt method in mathematics work. And I want you to figure out the other one. So this statement here, how we are going to solve it. Then I'll see you again in the solution.